4 days of athletic testing at the NFL Scouting Combine is wrapped up. So let's break down our biggest winners from today's group of offensive linemen, along with a few players we might have missed at other positions, in today's episode of Best Available. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube and follow us on socials at Best Available YT. If you'd like full access to my NFL Draft Big Board, consider becoming a member. I'll leave details to that in the episode description. If you're wondering why we don't talk about someone like Sonny Styles or Eli Stowers or Kenyon Sadiq or any of these guys that just shattered things, it's because we've already talked about them before. We have 3 other episodes of Combine winners, so be sure to go back and check those ones out as well if you're kind of blown away why someone's not mentioned in this episode. But we're going to start with a couple offensive linemen that had really good days and then talk about a handful of other players that I have to talk about because we did not give them the proper time in previous videos. A really, really good day for a few offensive linemen. I don't know if anyone helped their stock more than Georgia's Monroe Freeling, who now really has a shot at being a top 15 pick in this year's draft. That's kind of crazy when you consider where Freeling's career started at Georgia, kind of an afterthought, a little bit disappointing for the Bulldogs, and then in the second half of this past year just really turned it on and became a household name that teams are really going to covet, especially after the testing that we saw today. Measuring in at over 6'7" and 315 pounds, along with 34 3/4 inch arms, Freeling posted elite numbers across the board, including a 4.95 in the 40-yard dash and a 33.5 inch vertical to give him an elite 9.99 relative athletic score. It's a rare size and speed profile that Freeling is bringing to the NFL, and while there might be some concerns about a small sample size, he only really dominated, it felt like the second half of last season. I think the other, the spin zone of that is that you consider the leaps and bounds he's made as a player with that athletic profile, and when you combine that athleticism and the improvement, you've got a guy that has a real shot to be a franchise left tackle, especially given that frame. There are not many 6'7" guys with nearly 35-inch arms at the tackle position. Great day from him. Really, really, really good. I really think he secured a spot as not only a top 20 pick, maybe even a top 15 guy. There are few prospects who have had a better pre-draft process up to this point than Maxi Honachor out of Arizona State. Honachor was a really rock-solid player at right tackle for the Sun Devils this past season, but then the buzz really hit a fever pitch down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, where he was locking up guys in one-on-one, and then during the game, during the weekend, you see him just bully some guys, including this rep where he's just pancaking a guy to the ground. This is the kind of stuff we saw throughout that week, and then all of a sudden he gets to show up to Indianapolis and put up some really, really good testing. Those numbers include a 4.91 in the 40-yard dash that was tied with Spencer Fano for the fastest among offensive tackles in this year's draft class. That 40 time, along with some solid jumps, gives Honachor an outstanding 9.91 RAS, and scouts will be even more intrigued when you add on his nearly 34-inch arms. There's a lot to be excited about with Honachor's game. Not only does he move really well for a player of his size, that length is a real weapon when engaging with defenders. You just watch his tape against Texas Tech when he's going against these potential pair of first-round edges, and he just did a really, really good job against both of them. With how well this pre-draft process is going, along with that profile, I think there is an outside chance he's going to sneak into the end of the first round. This is one of the biggest winners, if not the biggest winner of the entire pre-draft process. Those are our offensive line winners for today, and we're going to dive into players we didn't talk about this weekend. And again, as a reminder, if you're looking for other winners from throughout this week, I highly encourage you to check out the other 3 videos we did over the weekend. If you're just like, where is this guy? He was so much more dominant. But when we're talking about linebackers, it's someone I felt bad not including in our linebacker video. I believe that was Thursday night, but we got to talk about Jacob Rodriguez. This is someone that teams and fan bases are going to fall in love with very quickly if they don't know about him already. If you're a college football fan, you obviously know about this guy. One of the best stories in college football last year. A former quarterback, kind of a Taysom Hill type at Virginia, transfers to Texas Tech as a walk-on, and then over time develops into this All-American and Heisman Trophy contender this past season with tremendous production. We already knew that Rodriguez was a really impressive athlete because it's kind of how he made up for his undersized build as an off-ball linebacker, but once we got the actual numbers and testing in front of us, I think it really puts in perspective just how special he is. On top of a great 40-yard dash of 4.57 seconds, Rodriguez posted an elite 38.5-inch vertical jump and a 4.19 in the short shuttle, along with an absurd 6.9 flat in the three-cone drill. What's even more amazing is, according to Brett Coleman, Rodriguez got that three-cone time at the end of the day after 10 attempts in doing the drill after everyone kept slipping. He was just determined to get that three-cone time recorded. That 9.52 RAS is despite a smaller frame for an off-ball linebacker, but that never seems to phase him when on the field. That's just the kind of guy that an NFL team is going to get with Rodriguez. I'm sure there are going to be so many scouts and GMs that just fall in love with this guy's competitive spirit. I really need to take a moment to apologize personally to Deion Burks, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma, because wow, did he finish with a dream week in Indianapolis. At just under 5'10 and 180 pounds, it's pretty clear that Burks is going to be confined to a slot role at the NFL level. But his combine performance was outstanding, and that's something he really needed after the past couple of years at Oklahoma. On top of one of the fastest 40-yard dash times at any position this week with a 4.3 flat, Burks also led all receivers with a 42.5-inch vertical and had a real strong 10'11" broad jump. All of that would have had Burks' agent thrilled after a really strong combine performance. But then the next day, this tiny-ass slot shows up and cranks out 26 reps on the bench press at 225 pounds. 45 pounds bigger than he is. He's cranking out 26 of these reps. It was one of the best numbers we've ever seen from any wide receiver at the combine. Burks flew under the radar during a couple of disappointing seasons at Oklahoma after transferring from Purdue. But this week in Indianapolis reminded everyone of the kind of athlete that Burks is when he's utilized correctly, and that's going to have some scouts really excited about the potential he could play in an NFL offense. Among the tight end group, we were originally going to talk about Stanford's Sam Roush on our combine video talking about the biggest winners at the position, but then a pair of top names in Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers were putting up like record-breaking performances, so we didn't end up talking about him, but I'll be damned if we don't mention him in this video. Roush is a true inline Y at the tight end position, coming in at 6'6" and 267 pounds. So we were not prepared for his overall athleticism and how he was going to test. On top of some elite jumps with a 38.5-inch vertical and 10'6" broad jump, Roush posted a really good 40 time of 4.7 flat, showcasing a great combination of speed and explosiveness on this gigantic frame. Even his agility scores were surprisingly solid, giving him a 9.94 relative athletic score, one of the best RAS cards of any player at any position this week, considering he did all of the testing. Roush is an effective and willing inline blocker who can also cover ground up the seam, and we saw some flashes of his route running during the Senior Bowl. In a tight end class that's coming in all shapes and sizes, a team looking for one of these pure inline blocker types with enough juice to go up the seam, Roush has a chance to be drafted earlier than I originally expected. It's a great week for him that really boosted his draft stock. Wrapping up the video, someone that I've kept an eye on over the last few years, and a former 5-star recruit and Penn State edge denied Dennis-Sutton, someone that really helped their draft stock and reminded everyone that he is one of these freakish athletes that we've rarely seen at edge. DDS is one of these bigger, longer edge prospects that we don't see often at 6'5.5" and 256 pounds with some real length to him. And despite that longer frame, he dominated a handful of drills to help out his draft stock. On top of an elite 40-yard dash time at 4.63 seconds, he also had a top-tier vertical jump of anyone at any position at 39.5 inches, and one of the best broad jumps we've ever seen from an edge at 10'11". He was even one of just 2 edge prospects in this class to actually run a 3-cone drill at the combine, and with a really strong time of 6.9 seconds, it helped him solidify a relative athletic score of 9.96. Dennis-Sutton's combination of length, play strength, and athleticism gives him some untapped potential to develop into a dangerous defensive weapon one day. He's still a little bit of a work in progress, but considering the growth he's made year over year, despite some tough conditions with Penn State's tumultuous program, this is a guy I'm really excited to see how he's going to compete at the NFL level, because I think one day he could be a real impact player for a defense. That's going to do it for our coverage of Combine Week. Thank you so much for following along throughout the week and weekend with all of these videos. At the end of this point, you're just kind of seeing numbers blankly when you're just staring at the screen with agility scores, 40-yard dashes, all the jumps, but it's such valuable information. It may not be everything, but it's definitely a part of the pie of the pre-draft process. So thank you for following along. This is not it for Best Available. We will have plenty of draft content coming in the coming week. So stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll be back later this week. Justice will be rejoining us to talk offensive line. So we'll have plenty of O-line discourse this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you later this week.